everyone, it's Nick. Welcome back to my channel. Okay, in today's video, we are going to be talking about 2022 interior design trends that will not age well. Oof, these are some of these trends that are really popular right now, right? So we're not talking about like really dated trends that have come and gone that we can sort of make fun of, although, you know, I love to do that too on this channel. These are trends that are currently really popular, that apparently are really big in 2022 and maybe even 2023, that I don't think are gonna age particularly well. So this is a difficult undertaking because I'm essentially going to have to sort of peer into my crystal ball and see what I think are not going to make sense in the future, to maybe give you a word of warning before you introduce these trends into your home, that maybe they might look great now and they might not make sense in 5, 6, 7 years. It doesn't necessarily mean don't do them. It just means that I don't think they're gonna age as gracefully as some of the other timeless trends that we see and love and discuss on this channel. So let's get into it. Okay, first trend I want to talk about is brightly colored plaster walls, specifically looking at the lime wash or Venetian plaster walls, but really looking at those brighter colored ones. I do think that the more neutral that you go with these, the better they're probably going to age. I'm a little unsure if they're going to at all look great in 5, 10 years, because I do think that these can look beautiful. They have sort of a, you know, Spanish villa, you know, on a hillside, some sun-baked Mediterranean vibes. Like, you definitely get that from these lime wash walls, which they are stunning, right? Like, I see them all over the place in Architectural Digest. You see them in different ad campaigns. Zara did a really famous campaign where they had these beautiful sort of Mediterranean or sort of like Tuscan sort of vibes with these gorgeous walls. They feel very imperfect, very lived in, very organic, which is why I do think they're really beautiful. But I think that there's a sense of place that is sometimes really in these sort of vintage looking plaster walls that we see in Europe that are just not going to make sense for a lot of people's sort of suburban homes. And so I do think that the plaster walls in general will look quite dated. But what I really want to talk about is the ones that are brightly colored. There is something about the lime wash and the plaster. I think it's the variation in texture that you're going to get, that if you're going for something like a gray or a cream, there is less variation. So it comes across a lot more subtle. It can almost look like matte paint, which is timeless, right? Paint is timeless. It almost looks like it's matte paint if you catch it in certain light. Like, it doesn't look as so obvious. It looks a little bit more subtle. But the brightly colored stuff, something about, you know, when you introduce pink or peach or purple, blue, like these really bright colors that you can really sort of emphasize that texture and that variation in the plaster or the lime wash, those I think are gonna look really dated. They're very trendy right now. They, you know, a lot of people love them. I don't know if in 5 years they're gonna look great. And I'm mostly basing that off of the fact that we saw textured walls in the 90s. You know, we've seen these sort of textures come and go before in eras gone by, and they always look dated once they sort of run their course. So I don't think these are going to age particularly well. I would love, of course, to hear your thoughts in the comment section. I think they can look really cool and trendy in the moment right now, but I just don't think they're gonna age well. Okay, next up for interior design trends of the moment right now that are not gonna age well, we gotta talk about neon plastic. This is the translucent acrylic neon stuff, but honestly, you know, you're seeing it in tables, end tables, decor, you're seeing it all over the place, and this is the push to the 90s revival that we're seeing. The postmodern neon everything that is very popular in fashion right now. It is very popular with, I think, younger people. And I think it's a response to sort of the modern or maybe even sort of the farmhouse decor that we saw previously, which a lot of people have kind of moved against. And it's sort of this postmodern trend that we have seen so prevalent right now. This is all sort of tied into that. I'm not hopeful that neon is going to look really great in 10 years. I'm also gonna throw these neon signs in there as well. I do admit that a neon sign can be fun and playful in the right space. I think it's going to look a little bit too juvenile and probably not timeless and classic in 5 to 10 years. But basically all of this neon stuff is not gonna look great, I think, in the future. I think it feels very of the moment. It feels very 2022. It feels very reactionary to what we've seen in the past. And again, we've seen this show before. Yes, these things can be really popular, but inevitably they always date. Subtlety, as I have said on this channel many times, it's kind of almost my catchphrase at this point, subtlety ages well. Subtlety ages better. It maybe not is the most interesting choice, but subtlety does age better over time. And I do think a lot of this neon stuff, I lived through the 90s before. I know how this neon stuff plays out. There will be a rejection of this neon several years down the road. Now, if you want to have fun with it in the meantime, have fun with it. Go get some great neon decor and you just have fun. But if you're gonna spend thousands of dollars on some designer piece that comes in neon yellow plastic, just know that that might not serve you in 5 years. And don't be surprised, is what I'm saying. Okay, next up, let's talk about the next trend that I don't think is going to age very well, and that is wall-to-wall marble. Okay, oof, this one is gonna, this one hurts actually, because I love marble. I do. I really do love marble. It's a natural stone, it's a natural material, and you all know that I think that typically ages better than a lot of the fake stuff, you know, like the neon plastic we just talked about. But you know, here's my issue with the wall-to-wall marble. First of all, let me explain what this means. It's a very popular trend right now in contemporary design, to use the same material multiple times or even clad the whole space in the same material. Whether that's wood, whether that's stone, whatever. So I'm talking, you walk into a bathroom and you've got the floors are marble, you've got the walls are marble, you've got the ceiling is marble, you've got the cabinetry in marble, just absolutely the whole thing. It could also be terrazzo, it could also be wood, it could also be whatever, it can also be all those things, but I think that marble is the most popular right now, especially the really graphic veiny marble. Now, I think that this will start to look really gaudy quite quickly. I love marble. As I've said, you all know that. But marble is really awesome to give you, especially the graphic stuff with lots of veining and lots of character, to give you that real like pop of interest, right? That really amazing focal point that just looks like art. It looks beautiful and gorgeous. And you can overdo it. You can have too much of a good thing. And I think interior designers, I don't usually see this in homeowners because usually like you can't, like nobody thinks to do this, but designers love this look right now. They just want to clad every surface in marble. And I think it's a little lazy, if I'm being quite honest, because it's just like, okay, everybody, you know, you can just go down to a stone yard, pick out a beautiful slab of marble. And again, if money's no object because you've got a client that's willing to like shell out tens of thousands of dollars on a bathroom, then it kind of feels a little simple in contemporary design, if I'm being quite honest, right? Like call a fabricator, get him over here, we're doing the whole thing in marble. It just feels a little bit lazy. And there is a certain ostentatious Russian oligarch quality here that I don't think we can ignore. Natural stone is beautiful. It can be overused. Proceed with caution. Okay, next up, we are going to be talking about going back to the postmodern. We're going to be talking about really sculptural furniture, specifically looking at like the sculptural dining chairs and the sculptural side chairs. People are loving the response to the typical modern where like everything looked kind of samey, which I do understand. A lot of people are really sick of the Scandi mid-century thing that we have seen so popular, and we see the same chairs over and over again. So the response has been sculptural furniture. Get something really cool, really interesting shape, just a really amazing standout piece that looks really cool. I don't think they're gonna age all that well. The easiest way I can predict that is that they're usually not comfortable. Sometimes really simple basic chairs or even traditional chairs like the Louis or the Queen Anne or whatever, those can be really comfortable and they can make sense, you know, because they're built for humans. And sometimes these sculptural furniture pieces are meant to be architectural statements and not really great design for human beings, which I don't know about you, but I think a living room, call me crazy, call me old-fashioned, many have, but I think chairs should maybe be designed for human beings to actually sit on and use. And some of these pieces are weird, and I think that that will make them look really dated in 5 years, and they also look really uncomfortable, and that will also mean that they will not last very long in people's homes. People will have them for a while, eventually get sick of them. When they stop seeing them on Instagram and Pinterest, they will really overstay their welcome, and those things are destined to end up on the Facebook Marketplace. And we will look back at those, I think, as a fun, weird moment in design, but ultimately people will move towards more traditional or more modern pieces, or just even more interesting pieces that people can create that have interesting shapes and fabrics and textures and whatever, but maybe that just suit the human form a little bit better than what we've seen. Now, moving into my next pick, which is kind of in the same vein, I'm just gonna put into a broad category of kooky couches. So the kooky couch trend, let's talk about it. Now I'm talking here about the Mario Bellini, the Togo, what's the one that I mentioned in that previous video that's got like the step pyramids? It looks like a poop emoji. I'll post it right here. All of these pieces that are kooky and weird are, again, the response to the modern couches that we've seen in the past. And in the same way that the sculptural side chairs, I don't think are gonna really stand the test of time. I think a lot of these couches, especially those really hot designer ones that we've just brought back in from the 70s, I think those are back here now, but are very indicative of this push towards more interesting sculptural pieces that are the opposite of what we've seen previously. But people will eventually get sick of them, they will move on, and they will no longer feel as trendy. And at that point, they will start to look really dated and just look very locked in this very odd period of interior design history that we find ourselves in right now. I would say give these a few years and they will probably not look amazing in the future. And again, we know this to be true because we've seen that before. We saw that in the 70s, right? We saw these pieces brought in and they were used quite a bit, especially, you know, these designer pieces were brought into these very expensive homes and they were very cool and such an interesting statement. And then we got sick of them and then we moved on. And I think the same thing's gonna happen with these. So the difference between some of those other pieces, like, you know, getting a neon sign or like whatever, some sort of bubble candle or something, the difference here is these are expensive and these are not easy to swap out, nor is it really all that sustainable to be changing your couch every few years. So, you know, this is probably a trend that I don't really love. You know, have fun with it while it lasts, because I just don't think these are gonna be particularly timeless and I don't think they're gonna age well in the future. Okay, and then my next pick for interior design trends that will not age well is going to be boucle. Now, here's the thing with boucle. I would actually say that is this true? Yeah, I think out of all the items that I have picked here, this is probably the one that visually I find the least offensive. I get it. I get why people like the boucle. I get that it has an interesting textural component to it, which can feel really fun, especially if you're choosing a sofa, maybe that's a little bit more modern nature or a side chair or whatever, and you're just looking for a fabric that is a little bit more interesting than like the performance fabrics or whatever that most people choose. So I get it. I get why people are looking for like an interesting textural component, and that's where boucle is really popular. I've heard people compare as well that boucle as a fabric is used a lot in fashion, and I say, yes, that is true. I think a Chanel boucle jacket, I think is a lot more likely to stand the test of time than a couch. And that for me is just because it's important to understand that although the interior design and fashion oftentimes inspire each other and can run parallel in their trends, the function of what they're being used for is often very different. I do think that there is a terry cloth towel quality to boucle that I think is a challenge. I think pets is a real challenge with boucle. And the other thing that I'm really noticing with boucle as well, let me know if you guys find this, is that typically sometimes how these trends work, and I think it's just really important to understand, is oftentimes wealthy individuals will hire designers or they will try to push the envelope with new design. And then your more mainstream retailers will start to kind of latch on to those pieces and bring them into their showrooms. And then the cheaper, kind of more economical retailers will then start to mimic what we see kind of at the high end. So it sort of kind of moves through the price ladder over time. We see that with fast fashion, right? Like we see, you know, the stuff, Dolce & Gabbana will come up with something and then all of a sudden there's a rip-off at H&M, right? Like we've seen that with fast fashion for a while, and you're definitely seeing that, of course, in home decor too. And so I think the reason I want to mention that specifically with boucle is that what I'm seeing is a lot of lower quality boucle coming in to retailers that obviously are not going to spend the premium it takes to make really beautiful, high quality boucle. Why does that matter? Because I think that typically the people that are going to want to buy the more designer pieces aren't going to love if boucle is sort of cheapened by moving into some of these lower price retailers. Does that make sense? And so because of that, I think that this is something that might look really gorgeous and cutting edge to some people, but as it moves through the price ladder, I don't think people are going to be as drawn to boucle as they were previously. So now I'm not trying to shame anybody for wanting to get in on a trend at sort of a cheaper price point. That's not what this is about. But I think with boucle in particular, because it's such a challenging fabric to work with, it really benefits from the care and attention that you get from choosing something of a much higher quality. And I think a lot of these boucles that are labeled as boucle are really just sort of cheaper polyester fabrics, trying to mimic the sort of quality wool or sort of wool blends that you see in some of the higher performing, higher quality fabrics. So I think the cheaper fabrics especially, even the higher quality ones, if I'm being quite honest, always sort of look like they're pilling to me. And I just think they look even cheaper when they are, you know, at that cheaper price point, because it really just doesn't work when it's this sort of imitation, fluffy sort of fabric that is honestly just feels very cheap to me. So my prediction that in a few years' time, and this is one of the ones I'm the least sure of, I don't think boucle is going to be as luxurious and as cutting edge and as amazing as people think it is. And for that reason, it'll be on the way out. Could I be wrong? Absolutely. It's been known to happen from time to time. It's rare, but it does happen. I could be wrong, but that's sort of my prediction. Okay, and then the next one, which I'm a lot more sure of, is going to be the excessive open shelving. Yes, if you saw one of my most recent videos where I talked about this, I mentioned kind of the importance of storage and putting doors on things that should be covered up. And that is something that a lot of you really loved that video and it really resonated with you, because it's true. Doors are not sexy because people don't like talking about the fact that they carry a bunch of ugly crap in their home, and sometimes they just want to like hide it because it's just, they need it, but they just don't need to have it displayed in their home. So the excessive open shelving that's happening in people's kitchens, specifically looking at you kitchen, I think is a trend that will go on the way out. In fact, you could make an argument that it's already there, that it's already going out, because it's just not practical for most people. Most people don't have a kitchen full of gorgeous designer pieces like their Gwyneth Paltrow. Like, most people just don't have that, right? You have practical pieces and maybe some nice ones that you want to show off, and that's great. But for the most part, the everyday stuff that we're using, the cooking utensils, the Instant Pot, the whatever, that stuff doesn't need to be displayed. And we all know that, which is why when you have a whole kitchen full of open shelving, you then start to go, oh right, cabinets were actually really cool. And that's something that we're going to see more of in the future. And that trend is definitely on the way out. And I predict that it will stay out for the next several years. So still though, you are seeing a lot of people with this desire for this wall-to-wall open shelving in the kitchen. My prediction, those will start to look really dated in about 3 to 5 years. Arguably, they kind of already do. So that's it for me for today, guys. I hope you really enjoyed this video. I'm gonna link here to my trendy or timeless video where I'm going to be talking about whether or not I think something is timeless or trendy. So if you like this video, you probably will like those too. So I will see you all in those videos. Thanks a lot. Bye.